Good evening to everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, investors, and I hope new investors too. I'm Chairman, Chief Executive of BMR Group, and make sure, little disclaimer, you have a quick read of that. That's all the time you're allowed, I'm afraid, but you've seen these disclaimers before. So I'm delighted to introduce BMR Group. We think it is one of the most undervalued and potentially successful companies on the market. You can see the share price. At the moment, 6.25p. It has doubled in less than 6 months, so we've had a very good run recently. Our brokers, I have to say, have a target price of, don't tell anyone, but it's 17p at the moment, and that's where we stand. So I think we've got a long way to go, and I hope we engender your support for the company. So we're on AIM, market cap of 12 million, and we're principally focused at the moment in Zambia. So to introduce myself a little bit, having never done public speaking before, I started at medical school. I then saw the light and became a chartered accountant, as it was so interesting. I spent 20 years in investment banking, floating companies, raising money, doing M&A work, got to know a lot of companies very quickly, and ran a couple of corporate finance departments. About 15 years ago, I went over to the other side, which for me has been much more interesting. I became director and chairman of various companies. At the moment, I'm chairman of a couple of companies and CEO of a couple of companies, which some of you may know, because I know some of you are very close in following the Twitter and tweet links. But a couple of years ago, I was introduced to probably what should be known as a basket case, a company called Barclay Mineral Resources. It was had a series of difficulties within it, and a lot of money had gone missing. So I joined the company. At that stage, I couldn't get anyone else to join the company with me. I got the shares suspended and appointed a firm of reporting accountants to undertake an investigation into the financial affairs of the company. Suffice to say, 7 months later, I'd completed a settlement with the family that ruled the company before. So we got £1 million in, we got the accounts audited, relisted, and the share price has grown steadily since then. So I think we have, certainly for that phase of BMR, delivered value to shareholders. The most important element is building up a team of very good people. I was delighted that Jeremy Hawke, sitting on my right, joined me as a director of the company. Jeremy is responsible for mining and operations of the business. And between us, we have one non-exec director. Between us, we run the company extremely tightly. We're very hands-on management. We have very little overhead expenditure. I inherited an office initially, which is costing about £300,000 a year in Park Lane. I now work out of a small one-man office with 2.5 people in Piccadilly, and that costs £1,500 a month. So we're very focused on overhead, and at the end of the day, it's about you. It's creating value for you as shareholders. If this doesn't work for me, and it doesn't work for you, I'm going to get nowhere. I need to create value for shareholders, and that is our focus. So we are totally committed to generating good returns for BMR. But what on earth has BMR got? Well, after sorting out the mess of BMR, we discovered it had a very good asset base, which comprised something called tailings. In the mining sector, you can go from one end of it is exploration, and people lose a lot of money on exploration, I have to say. You might find something. If you find something, then you need to raise a lot of money to go into mining, and then you sell the end product. What we have is so-called the byproduct of mining, called tailings. Oh, I didn't mean to spit at the microphone, sorry about that. So we process tailings. We have over 5 million tons of tailings at Kabwe, which is in Zambia. It's one of the oldest mines that was in operation from the early 1900s up to the late 1900s. And we've got tailings in various categories. There's something called wash plant tailings, which are very rich in zinc and lead. We've got leach plant residues. We've also got imperial smelter filter, furnace slag, and Velt's kiln slag, and we can do things with all those tailings at the company. So I believe it's very good news. We've got a very strong asset base at the company. But what do we do with the tailings? Well, Jeremy and I have been looking at samples of the tailings, and Jeremy has worked with various consultants we've retained in order to find a methodology to convert those tailings into metals. And we have successfully developed the methodology that we believe is going to produce high-grade zinc and lead. We're lucky that the prices of zinc and lead are rising in the market. They're probably around about $2,500 a tonne, $2,300 a tonne. So it's very positive pricing that we've seen in the market over the last 6 months. So we have the processing methodology. Do we have permission to process the tailings? Which is the next key element. We submitted our report into ZEMA, which is the Zambia Environmental Management Agency, noted down here. That went in December 15, and by June 2016 we got permission effectively from ZEMA to process the tailings. So all well and good. We know we've got good assets, we know we've got the right process to treat the tailings, and we know that we can convert them into good metals and sell them. So that's just a brief overview of the tailings side, and I've been chased on timing probably. Right, well we can come on to the other parts of the asset base later, but we've acquired another business in Zambia, which is the Star Zinc mine. That was announced this week that we'd exercise the option, which gives us a very strong asset base for the company with high-grade zinc at Star Zinc. We've also announced an interesting tungsten exploration project in Portugal, which might yield other things. And if we develop that, it could be in conjunction with somebody else. But I believe that we need to create a good, solid asset base, not just focus in Zambia. I don't think our shareholders would want us to stay solely in Zambia, so we are looking around the world. Not too far, not too many exotic places. Tell you, we go to the guest house in Zambia and the electricity doesn't work, the windows are broken, we have a tough life. So what we need to do is to convert the tailings by building a plant. Plants can be very expensive. You can go out and retain a firm of worldwide consultants who will charge a fortune and therefore take money away from shareholders. We're doing it from the other end, and we are building our own plant and sourcing equipment very cheaply and very effectively, I believe. And we put out a recent update on building the plant that came out today. So what do? We build the plant, but what do we do with the product at the end of it? Now, if we've got zinc and lead, we believe there's a very good market for that. But we need to find a buyer. So we have now secured an offtake agreement, which is effectively a sale and purchase agreement for the product that we generate. That's with a South African company, African Compass International, which is terrific, which means we've got sales as soon as we produce the metals. The next stage is, of course, finding the money to build the plant, which is the last bit of the jigsaw already. And we have raised money 3 or 4 times for BMR. Thank you very much for your support. We've raised money at just over 3p, just over 4p, and latterly at 6.7p in 2016. So we've got quite a lot of equity finance in place, which is very good news for the company. We're cash rich, we have no debt, and we've raised money at successive prices. With each of the fundraisers we've done, we've given a warrant. Now those warrants are exercisable at 7p a share, and they'll be exercisable in a period after we announce our results to June 16. So that we hope those are going to be well in the money, and that should secure more equity finance. We've also costed the plant at $2.68 million with an industry standard deviation on cost, so it could be 20% less, 20% more, in that sort of range. And in order to protect ourselves, we've got this loan facility agreement for $5.2 million. So we are well financed, and you'll find many smaller mining companies do not have as much finance as we have in place. So I'm delighted we're doing that. Jeremy's also conceived another product, which is zinc sulfate heptahydrate, which he will tell you more about. That has a very fast market, particularly in Africa. So I've mentioned Star Zinc, which we've announced recently. That is local to us in Zambia. We're focusing on the Welts kiln slag. Some of you may have read about that. We need to put another report into ZEMA to get permission to be able to sell that. I think bear in mind our tailings are at Kabwe in Zambia. Kabwe is one of the world's most polluted places, so there's quite a strict control, the corporate social responsibility. with generating any tailings processing operation. Sorry, I can't quite see this from here. Portugal will come to, and Jeremy will cover the methodology and the plant design. So, I mean, the milestones that we've achieved in a very short period of time, we've got very good recovery from the tailings. We've had peer reviews. Because of the history of the company and so many difficult announcements that you have to read in the market from so many mining companies that are not always, how shall I say, full of the truth. We make sure what we put out is absolutely gospel truth, and we have our announcements and the costings peer reviewed. So we're comfortable we have an independent support for the announcements we make. I've mentioned the Veltskiln slag and the fundraising. We're starting construction. We have a website, bmrplc.com, and on Twitter I do post photographs of the development of the plant as we're building that. So we're well financed, as I say, and we have money from the $5.2 million facility to develop the Star Zinc operation. So our future milestones, what are you going to expect from us over the next few months? We would hope to get ministerial approval for the Star Zinc agreement. Having signed the sale and purchase agreement, the minister's got to put his nod to it, which should be straightforward. ZEMA approval for the sale of Veltskiln slag we expect to get. We will continually update the market with the costing assessment and photographs on camera. The cost assessment will enable you to put two and two together and see what profits we can make. The warrants, as I mentioned, are exercisable in a period 42 days from the announcement of our results, which should be around mid-December. After we built the plant, we need to get it formally commissioned by ZEMA so it can start producing, and then we start our sales. So we confidently expect there to be sales generation certainly by the end of 2017, and that is pretty quick, near-term generation of revenues, which I think is very strong for parties, which is why our broker is saying a market target price of 17p per share. So I'll just pass you over to Jeremy Hawke, if I may.
So good evening. This picture here just gives you an idea of where our assets are based. Cabwe, pretty obvious, that's where all the tailings are, and the Star Zinc project, which is just outside Lusaka. Now we're talking about roughly 100 kilometers, one from the other, and that's on the main road between Lusaka and what they call the Great North Road up to the Copper Belt. Now this is a quick picture that gives you an idea of the deposition of the tailings when it was in operation. This is the material which we're going to treat first, what we call the wash plant tailings, and then we'll move on to that big chunk in the center. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So that's just to give you a little snapshot, but what I want to do is to come on and tell you a little bit more about what we actually have there. Now, here you can see we have JORC resource in wash plant tailings and leach plant residue, 3,222 tons. Grading wash plant tailings is particularly interesting, grading at 10.6, 7.2. The non-JORC element, which is the imperial smelting furnace slag, a very precise number, but it's non-JORC simply because at the time of calculating the tonnage, there was no treatment method which would turn it into a JORC resource. The Veltskiln slag, 1,100,000 tons, which we are trying to use as a construction material. Now, this material down here, it's sort of scattered amongst, I'll go back here, it's scattered amongst this corner down here. We've had a lot of trouble trying to identify where it is exactly. I'm sure we'll mop it up at some point, but it's a minority tonnage, and we'll get to it at some time if it's still there. It's not clearly identifiable. So just moving on. Now, what is all this worth? Now, this is interesting to us. It's $1,557,000 US dollars at current metal prices. Now, you'll see that we've included in the non-JORC element a value on vanadium, and we haven't got that on the wash plant tailings and leach plant residue. I can say that there is vanadium in both of these tailings element, and we are going to establish the amount of vanadium there. We have an idea of what it is, but we obviously have to make sure that whatever number we publish, we can substantiate. So we are going about that at the moment. But there's the number. That is what the tailings is worth as it stands at the moment in situ. Now, how are we going to get this out? This process here is proprietary to us. We have developed it, and it has taken probably, it started about 3 years ago, the concept. But what it is, it's called a leach acid brine process. I'll run through it as quickly as I can just to give you a snapshot as how it actually works. What you do, the tailings itself is all fairly fine stuff. It runs probably between about 150 microns and about 30 microns. And we can pick that up as it is and feed it straight into the leach section. We put brine in, we put sulfuric acid in, and we take it through a sequence of tanks there and through the thickeners. So we have, so we end up with a pregnant liquor solution, which contains the lead, the vanadium, and the zinc. We then put it through the row of, sorry, wrong button. We put it through the row of tanks sitting up the top there, the right one. There's 6 of them there, where we precipitate out, and we produce a filtrate which contains the lead and the zinc. We then take it and re-leach, and we then take out with sulfuric acid the zinc, and then we take out separately the lead. And then we take the PLS from the zinc re-leach and put it through the SX plant. And from there we can produce the zinc heptahydrate, or we can produce cathodes, or we can produce both. And then in the other circuit, in the bottom there, the right, we produce the lead sponge. Now we have included here, this is a provision for our vanadium circuit here. So we've got plans for that. All we have to do now is to complete the test work, which is just about finished now, and that will decide the design of the plant. So now what are we going to do? We're starting off with 5 tons an hour. That was always our stated intention. And also, we're using what we call the WPT, in other words, the wash plant tailings. We know lots about the wash plant tailings. It's easy stuff to process. So we start off and we make sure the process works properly first. Then we're going to go through a first stage ramp up. Because the star zinc is so easy, it's basically willemite, it's so easy to process, we know that we can combine it with the wash plant tailings. Now the other thing which is interesting to us is that front end there, we do continuous optimization work as we develop this process here. We've discovered that the leach kinetics mean that we can probably put through at least twice the tonnage. So that's interesting for us because it means that we don't have to, when we do a ramp up, we don't have to start putting in hundreds of other tanks and thickeners and this, that, and the other. We can put the material through and process it and look at what squirts out the other end. We're probably going to have to put a bit more capacity in the SX plant, but we can achieve that quite easily by putting another module in. Now, second production ramp up. During our investigation work, we were particularly anxious to find out whether we could process the ISF slag and the leach plant residue together. The tonnage is roughly twice as much leach plant residue to the ISF slag. So the instruction we gave to our metallurgical partners was, please look and see whether we can process these two together and keep the acid consumption at a reasonable level. improve the recoveries of the material. And he did a wonderful job, this guy. He was able to achieve all these basic parameters. So we were very, very pleased. And then what we said, well, to maintain the level of zinc and lead production, what we'll have to do is ramp up the tonnage at the same time, because there's an awful lot of this stuff. Sweeten it up with star, and we're able to maintain and increase the zinc production quite easily. Lead will stay the same. There's not an awful lot of lead there. So that is roughly, that is going in now. That will come, as you can see, in 2018, and that will come 2 years after it. There is a little bit of there's a bit of design work we have to do at the front end to accommodate the ISF slag and the LPR, but that is, we've established it's not a major change. It can be incorporated in that plant as it's designed there. Right, moving on, star zinc. Star zinc is very important to us. It's, as you can see, that big sort of blob in the bottom there is Lusaka. Star zinc is about 20 k's out of Lusaka along the Great North Road. That's the one there, going up the middle there. Continue on, you come to Kabwe. So it's a very easy access, very easy to take material in, material out, and material up to Kabwe. Now that is a picture of what we have sitting in the open pit as it is at the moment. High grade zinc in the form of willemite. As you see at the top there, just to run down quickly, 275,000 tons of 20.2% zinc has been drilled out by our friends Anglo-American about 50 years ago. Willemite ore, that is predominantly, I think 70 or 80% of the ore that zinc ore that's coming out of the pit will be willemite, compatible with our process up in Kabwe. We have internally done some scoping metallurgical work, and the indications are that we can get 90% metal recovery, which is very good. What also is very interesting to us is the gold and the germanium. Now, we do not at the moment have the metallurgy sorted out to get that out, but we will sort it out. And we've actually just given the instructions to the metallurgists to start investigating that side. Within this license area we've got, there are 3 other very interesting targets which we're going to start looking at very closely in the course of the next few months. So that's a very good prospect there. Now, this is just a sort of indication, just purely on the 275,000 tons, 20%, assuming a 90% recovery, we cover the, 50-odd thousand tons of metal. At the current metal prices, we're looking at 127 million, just on the acquisition of star zinc. Right, moving on from Zambia to our recent acquisition in Portugal. Esther mine. Esther mine, there were 2 mines in Esther. There was the Ragufi mine and the Frades mine. The circle there obviously shows where Esther is in relation to the country. The next picture there on the right-hand side just gives you a rough idea as to where within the license area Ragufi and Frades exists. Those 2 mines incidentally were operated, one by the Germans and one by the British in the last World War. You know, they're 10 kilometers apart and quite sociable to each other. It's just a quite incredible situation. And the last picture is just a picture of the old workings that we've come across there. This is very interesting for us because we do know the Wolfram is certainly running around here at I wouldn't say it's 0.3, that is just a sample. Anyway, little pictures there, and that's just a picture. And so my friend here.
I know we've got to push the time because apparently there's Q&A to follow as well. But I just want to say to you that BMR has got significant assets. We've got ZEMA approval to process that. We are starting, we're well financed, we've got a lot of cash, we've got debt facility, we've got the offtake agreement. What else could you want? You want a higher share price? Well, I think there's a long way to go. Target price is 17p, as I said. I believe we're a very strong management team, and we welcome your support over the years to come. Thank you very much.